Hey everyone, welcome to second episode of First Principles. I'm Zishan. I do developer relations at Eigen Labs. We build coordination technologies, focus on AGI, how the post AGI era would look like, and keeping individual agency alive. Essentially, how being against what close agency looks like. But today I wanted to talk to someone, whose actual job is expanding, who gets to build the backend, the SDKs, the docs that let someone with just an idea ship something real, and who's now deep in why agents behave the way they do it. So let's get into it. Aditya, over to you.
Sure. Hi everyone. Aditya Oberai here. I lead developer relations at Appwrite, where I get to explore how developers build products, how we can make it easier and faster for them to build by simplifying anything that their backend and their infrastructure needs. And I've had the opportunity to work with developers across events, through their learning experiences, through documentation, educational content, anything you can talk about in the developer ecosystem, I've probably been able to touch about. So I'm excited about this conversation.
And just to add to this, I think Aditya's conversation was one of the first conversations I watched when I moved into DevRel. I think it was like a GitHub series on,
Very possible.
yeah,
Very possible.
that was on Twitch.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I think that must have been what Khushbu hosted, right? Yeah, I mean, yeah. I've had a few different GitHub education episodes.
Yeah, that's fine. So, on that note, so Upright was your first job, right? And your first DevRel role.
Yeah.
So you have said that you were doing DevRel before you knew it had a name, right? Being into communities, mentoring hackathon participants, running initiatives.
Yeah.
And only realized, later that was the job. So when did you notice it had actually, become something with a name and a job?
It's an interesting question. So I'll be honest. I think to really understand how I came about this, we end up going to first year of college for me, because back in 2018 I was fresh in college, just out of boarding school, so I was used to doing 10 different things aside from academics, and my first thought in college was I need to do something outside of class. Right. Some co-curricular, something, maybe clubs, and by circumstance or fortune, whatever you'd like to call it, I ended up being a part of our tech fest team, and some of our clubs where I was exposed to what a hackathon is for the first time.
Got it.
I saw people coming together, people coming about to build, and I really enjoyed that sort of an environment, right, where you saw people coming from wherever they could to collaborate to build some cool stuff. And I felt like I wanted to be around developers doing that, not just participating but also enabling. I think that first experience was quite pivotal for that, and that's where I really discovered the world of external communities, because I think that particular event had a few GitHub campus experts and Microsoft student partners, or student ambassadors as they're called now. And so that exposed me to this wide world of tech communities, really. And second year I was fortunate enough to get accepted into Microsoft's student program there, which then further widened my horizons of what people were doing with tech communities, how they were educating, the kind of events they were organizing.
Right.
All of these platforms, right? A big part of that program was also us students being able to collaborate with the cloud advocacy team at Microsoft, which was trying to create more awareness about Azure and its surrounding tooling ecosystem, right? And so that's where I really saw what advocacy or DevRel was for the very first time, right? Externally, it looked very cool, people having fun with other people, just helping them build.
It still does.
It looks cool, right?
Yeah,
and the fact is
that's the point. Yes.
I think DevRel's become this very complex sort of a thing today. I think at the end, it really goes back to its simplest roots, right? Where people who can build, who like to help other people build, right? If tech is magic and developers are wizards, we are the wand makers.
Yeah.
In some ways. Or whether you want to consider us the wand makers or the professors or whatever, we kind of get to hold all of those responsibilities,
100%.
which is very, very fascinating. And so over college I kept doing that across different communities, through different organizations. I was a part of Google's developer student clubs program. I worked with MLH for a while as a coach to support their hackathons. I did a lot of independent events of my own, organized hackathons, participated in hackathons, built projects, contributed to some open source work. And all of that really brought me back to the perspective that I loved building. I loved helping people just as much. So I personally wanted to explore some sort of a midway where I got to do both.
Got it.
And that brought me back to DevRel once again, right? Because what I'd been seeing all of these individuals do through these programs I was contributing to, they were doing this professionally, just as
Was essentially
we were doing it voluntarily.
but with a name.
Yeah. I mean, that's exactly what it is, right? We do
Right.
it voluntarily, they were doing it professionally. So,
Right.
I was fortunate enough to find that opportunity early on, and luckily all the work that I'd done over 4 years in college had contributed to me developing the necessary experience to at least get a start for it.
Got
So
it.
circumstance, fortune, hard work, all of it kind of came together.
Awesome. And like on the same note, and I remember telling you told me this I think a couple of years ago. So, and of course, like you have said it at multiple places in your blogs as well. So you have said that a developer advocate, has to be a technologist first, that you cannot relate to your community's problems if you could not build with the product itself. Where's that line though? How much can someone advocate for a tool they cannot actually build with before it starts to actually show?
Zishan, I'm going to ask you a question, right? Let's say you work for a web hosting platform. Okay. Like for example, at Appwrite, we have sites, right? We'll just take this as an example for now, right? You work for a web hosting platform. Would you be in a better position to help the developers in your community or your customers if you know how to build web apps, or if you did not know how to build web apps?
Yeah, this kind of makes sense.
Right. So it really comes down to whether you can put your feet in the shoes of the people building with your platform. Right. Now, I'm not going to say that, let's say if you're working for a web hosting company, then you need to be an AI expert or an ML expert, right? Or if you're in Web3, you maybe don't need to be an expert on Kubernetes, but you need to be able to build enough with your platform and the kinds of platform that in the space you're working in, to the point where your technical depth exists at least a few levels below just the surface.
Right.
So you understand what's going on under the hood of these products. You understand what kind of problems your community and customers will face, and you understand, if someone does have a conflict, if you do need to have a nuanced conversation, a situation, you're able to do so, right? With that said, developer relations can have professionals who are not necessarily technical.
Okay.
Like, for example, every community manager may not need to have the same amount of technical skill as
I agree.
a developer advocate or even a developer experience engineer, because their skills will have to rely a lot more on their ability to work with people, right? That role will have to rely a lot more on those skills. Similarly, a technical writer, they will still need a level of technical ability, but they also at the same time need to hone other skills more deeply, like their writing ability, right? Developer advocates tend to end up being somewhere in the center where they need to have at least a bit of all of these.
Right.
But that might also be me talking just from experience and having observed. So the role is quite fluid, right?
I think it kind of depends on what the company wants.
Exactly. It comes down to the business goals. And me personally, what I've tried to endorse is that I think even though we in general try to define developer advocates as people, who are able to advocate for these developers and their companies, or talk about the companies outside as well. By definition, they're supposed to be perfectly placed at this intersection, but I believe that's not really purely possible anyway. Because every company needs something different. You're always going to be biased to a certain front, right? So it's all right to be a little more fluid there. But in general, even with that sort of an intersection, you still need to be able to build. You still need to be able to work with the product that your employer or your community or whatever organization you're supporting is putting forward. So that's kind of where I come from. You need to be able to build with your own ecosystem at the minimum, right? Anything more is great to have.
Right.
It's extra. It's good to have, but that's the bare minimum. You need to be able to do that.
Back to first principles. So to push on that build with it idea from a different angle, and tell me if it's just me projecting or not. To me, developer relations is basically an access mechanism. Okay. A good SDK and good docs means someone with no backend experience can ship a real app
Yeah.
But do you think of the job that way, as widening who gets to build what, or is it something else from your end?
I think that's where it starts, doesn't it?
Okay.
Increasing access and
Right,
enablement
right.
is where it has to
Right,
begin.
right.
Because first things first, what we're doing it is making it easier for people to build with our systems and our ecosystem and our tools and our platform. So it has to start there, right? But then it expands further, right? Once you've allowed that sort of a discovery and access, once you've started with enablement itself can mean a lot of different things, right?
Right.
Access itself can mean a lot of different things. When we say access, do we mean are they able to reach the platform and try it? Do we mean are they able to build something real? Do we mean are they able to scale it up?
Yeah.
Right. And so if we define it in all three manners, all three manners require a different set of efforts.
It's pretty
around them.
contextual.
Exactly. And so in its purest sense, while it might mean increasing access, access itself can mean a lot of different things, right?
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, yes, it does come down to ensuring that people are able to build with these tools, right? For some, it might mean just being able to discover them. For some, it might mean having the right initial education or the tools to help them get started.
Right.
For some, that might mean being able to scale something real, right? So yeah, there are access mechanisms, right? As long as you're able to understand what access means for the particular individual.
Yeah, I mean, again, like pretty contextual, right?
Yeah.
So, and the reason why I asked this, I'll go to that. So, there's a line in your one of your own blogs. So, there was this blog, I think, which I loved a lot, like stop vibe coding every damn time. And that's where you actually drew a line, right? That and this is something even I go by, something which I have told in my team as well, that AI assisted developers are still architects, right?
Yeah.
Vibe coders just hope the house stands because someone else drew the blueprint. But AI coding tools are exactly what's pulling non-developers in it, right? You want more people building and you want them to understand what they ship. So how do you hold both of these?
Here's my question to you. Very fair that it's very fair to say that AI tools are bringing in a lot of non-developers and making the ability to build accessible to them. The question is, do they want to understand?
Yeah, that's
because I think what a lot of us misassume, and I've been guilty of this in the past, is that someone who's building with my platform wants to understand the nuance of why it is great. What I've realized is that depending on the kind of individual you're working with, some care about why it's great, some just care that it's great, and you've got to meet them where they're at. It can't be that you force them to understand. It can't be that you force the conversation, right?
That is true.
It's like saying, someone who wants a Mercedes or a Porsche over, let's say, a Toyota or a Lexus will want it, right?
Right.
Some will do so because they care about the AMG engine. Some will do so because Mercedes has prestige. It doesn't mean the Toyota is bad. It doesn't mean the Lexus is bad. They're fantastic, right? But if you are the Lexus in that conversation, right, you need to find them where they're at, right? Like, for example, if all you keep telling them is how reliable Lexus is and this is what the engine spec is and this and that, some will care, some will not, right?
That's true. That's true.
It just won't matter to everyone. So you've got to meet them where they're at, right? Understand whether they actually want to know whether it's great or not. Understand what they're looking for from the system. Are they looking for the most powerful tool in the world, or are they looking for the easiest tool in the world? And try to make both happen, right? Again, going back to that previous point, it's access, right? What does access mean? So context. So make it accessible for their situation. And you're golden. That's what it is.
Because following up to that, right? Like, you see both sides of that in person. Like, you run Dune Tech community meetups in Dehradun. Build sessions, AI first, World AMAs. So what do you see in a room where most people have fewer years in than you, that you just don't get online?
I'm glad you actually brought this up, because I think Don't Tech community is one of those particularly more interesting organizations that I've been able to help.
Shout out to
initiate.
Tech community.
Appreciate that. Appreciate that. What's interesting is that when you're in a place like Bangalore, it's easy to assume that everyone has the awareness.
Makes sense.
Of exactly what's happening, the know-how to how to operate all of these tools and these platforms, and to be able to hack around and play with them. and to make a nuanced decision.
Right.
It's not the same outside some of these more loaded ecosystems. Like if you in India, for example, right? If you head outside of Bangalore or Hyderabad or Pune or Chennai or the NCR, and you go to some of the other spots, right?
Yeah.
Not everyone has the same awareness. Not everyone has the same opportunities.
True.
Careers don't exist the same way they do in these cities, right? And so what happens is that you also see a more limited exposure on the real world implications and consequences of tooling, right? They might have heard of a React and a Vercel. Some of them might have tried out like an Appwrite or one of these other tools. Maybe they're hacking around with Claude or Codex, but do they understand what that means when you're building real software? Do they get the opportunity to always build real software? Some do, a lot do not, right? And it's very easy to sometimes say that the internet is there for everyone and the exposure is there for everyone, but I don't think without the necessary ecosystem and community and examples of how people operate this way, is it even it's not even possible for people to take those first steps.
Right.
And so what we end up doing a lot of the time is focusing on how to take those first steps, right? How to mold those sort of mindsets and how to develop those approaches, right?
Acting like a launchpad for
in
people.
ways,
Okay.
but I think more than even a launchpad, a launchpad also happens when you're able to start up with something, right? But taking a step further behind,
Okay.
right? I've been fortunate enough to have some wonderful mentors in that community.
Right.
Like shout outs to Akshat, Amanpreet, Hridesh, Jyoti, everyone who's been a part of this from day one. And a lot of our day ones are still there and they're helping out actively in the community.
Awesome.
Right? Because what happens is that some of these folks have had the experience, they've earned their gray hair. I talk about myself more than anyone else at this point. But they've earned their gray hair doing all the work that they have, right? And so it's all solely about helping get the next generation started. Help them take their first steps, understand what first steps are even supposed to mean when it comes to tech, and help nurture the sort of mindset that will allow them to independently grow on their own terms,
right,
in the directions that they choose, right? And we've started seeing results. Like I think we had a very interesting conversation the other day in that community about someone figuring out the cheapest RAM solutions because they were trying to convert, I think, a 6-7-year-old laptop into a home server. 4 years back, we would not have had that conversation.
100%.
Right. At least in Dehradun. We would have had it here in Bangalore, but probably not there. Right. And that's the difference we're trying to see, right? It's trying to create this exposure and widen the horizons of what tech means for us, what it can do, and allowing people to control their narratives with tech, right? Like, why should your narrative just be went to college to get a job? Not saying a job isn't important,
Yeah, of course.
but tech is so much wider than that, right? And so it tries to inculcate a love for tech.
Right.
We see some really fun stuff happen, like the last meetup we did, which was I think back in May. My talk there was basically just me asking people to vote on what we should try to build and building it with them, which is now converted into an actual Pokédex for all members of the community.
Nice.
Another individual came, showed how you can operate in the browser using a PS5 controller. And so, that's the kind of fun you want to have with tech.
Exactly.
That's how you want to ensure we can build a sort of a love for tech, right? Where we're able to explore and understand. Also understand what you cannot do or what you should not do, ethically approach tech,
Exactly.
and AI, and really just help people get started experimenting with tech so they can then start building their knowledge bases, and then really grow into technologists on their own right.
I think just to add to this, tech is like, if you look at it the right way, tech has always been fun.
Exactly.
I mean, like with the advent of AI, it has become much more accessible. I feel people are making like hand controlled drones for a weekend project, things like that. So
20, 25, 30 years back, games were the same magic.
Exactly.
You don't know what was going on, but you loved it. I think that's how a lot of us started off, right?
Yeah, true.
And I'm just happy that AI is doing that for a lot of people who weren't necessarily as technology inclined. Because I think we're seeing that sort of I'm going to use the word magic. I think tech is magic.
Yeah.
Right. For anyone who doesn't understand what's going on underneath, science has always sufficiently been magic.
100%.
Right. And that's what tech is. Right. So we're just seeing that magic touch upon the lives of people who wouldn't have been as technologically inclined in the past. Right. It's doing for a lot of consumers what games did for me or for you or other people around us in the developer circles.
Right.
That's really what it is.
And it's pretty nice to see people
It is.
using it.
It is.
Like, just to go from this part to a bit into technicalities.
Sure.
Getting into the backend part. Okay. So there was like a piece. I think you also teased it in one of your meetups before it came out. So the Appwrite versus Superbase for AI app builders. Like the piece is from back in April. Okay. So the framing is that backend is the thing the agents talk to on every turn, and clear primitive names and predictable APIs reduce where an agent can invent something wrong. So where have you actually watched something like this, an agent inventing something wrong against a backend, or in general? I mean,
okay. You build apps, right? You wipe code or use AI tools. I do too. Sometimes I use AI tools, sometimes I just leave it to them. When you try leaving something to an agent,
I get that.
what you have done is, this is what happens. The lesser information you give an agent tool, agents are AI tools like these are non-deterministic by nature. 100%. LLMs are non-deterministic, right? You leave them to do what they want. They will do whatever they think makes sense.
Yeah.
Right. The
and waste a lot of credits doing so.
It's expensive. Credits are getting expensive. Please do not waste credits at this point. Do not unnecessarily
do token maxing.
Yeah, I'm genuinely afraid of token maxing at this point.
Yeah.
Anyone who does it, and I have friends who do it, and I'm legitimately afraid for their credit card bills.
Oh God.
Eventually, because right now it's just cheap. Eventually, it's not going to be this cheap
Of
for
course
sure.
It won't be.
They're all businesses at the end of the day. They need to make money, so they will make money, and they're just getting you dependent on these systems. It's like alcohol. I don't drink, but I've been around enough alcoholic friends in my life to know they're all hooked. And that's what I don't know if someone's used this analogy for agents. It's alcohol. It just gets you in, and then you're stuck.
That's crazy. I might make a clip out of this section. But that's a good analogy to understand.
That it's basically addiction, right? Like we talked about gaming earlier. Gaming does that to you as well.
100%.
We're losing track. I'm gonna get back on track. The point is this, right? The less specific you are, the wider your surface of errors can be, right? Which is why we've preferred stronger typing with AI systems. We want to ensure that there's a better test suite around with them, because we're trying to essentially limit the possibility and the potential of mistakes that these tools
adding guardrails, limiting token spend.
We need more guardrails. We need better walls, essentially, right? And that's essentially what this perspective is about, right? Where if you can limit the potential surface of errors or mistakes that an agent can make by either making it so predictable and easy to consume the tools you're building with, by ensuring that it's easier to evaluate what an error looks like. True. It's much easier to make an iterative loop where you're getting more reliable answers, right? It's also easier to track errors as they happen, right? So let's say you have a feedback loop for your agent where if it gets an error, it's able to operate on it. If you didn't have strong typing, if you didn't have proper error handling, all of that, how would your agents know whether something's gone wrong or not?
That should not be in prod then.
Exactly. If you didn't have a test suite, even if it did something wrong but it technically worked, your tests would fail, which would then thereby imply that something's not gone as expected. True. Expected behavior needs to be defined, right? So it's really about minimizing the surface of errors that an agent can make for you. And I think that strongly typed systems, strongly typed applications, better error handling, better test suites,
guardrails,
all of those act as good guardrails for these sort of errors.
So, like in the same blog, a little bit down. You also argue that typed row level permissions are easier for an agent to get right than Postgres RLS policies written in SQL, because you can verify them by reading one page of generated code. But isn't that a tooling problem more than a permissions model problem though? Because better code gen closes that gap either way.
You're right. As code generation gets better, it will be easier for a code generation tool to get all of those policies and so on correct, right? But like we said, you're increasing your error surface. Let's say you have to fill in the blank. You have a test here, right? You either get 5 questions, fill in the blank, so you get 5 subjective answers to submit. Which one do you think is easier to fill the right answer in?
The right answer, would it be fill in the blanks in a way?
Because like the more limited your answer is, the more objective it becomes, your solution, right? I mean, more than what you can fill in, the question is more what is easier to fill into. What is it easier to objectively fill the right answer into, right? A fill in the blank will require a level of specificity, right? So it can either be right or wrong. Right. There's not a lot of midway there, and that's what Appwrite's permissions model is trying to do.
Got it.
It makes it easier for a human or an agent to understand what is right or wrong. And let's be very real here. This system was designed for humans, right? It wasn't first designed for agents, but agents are also mimicking what humans can do.
Right.
What humans end up doing is a different story from what they can do. But at the end of the day, if it's more reliable for a human, it's going to be more reliable for an agent, right? Humans can mess up on a wider set of policies. Right. Humans can make mistakes there. Therefore, agents can make mistakes as well, right? Because agentic tools are trained on first and foremost human developed systems, which now of course has then become an iterative loop where they're training on agent built systems, because that's how we're all building today. But if you simplify, if you decrease the error surface, lesser mistakes can be made. Lesser mistakes can also probably be more easily caught. And so in a lot of ways, the permissions model as we developed helps make a more reliable system for any application, right? Whether a human is working on it, whether an agent is working on it, it's trying to make a simpler, more reliable system for everyone.
Right. Bringing in, another one of your pieces, or like to be specific, your talk. So what your MCP Dev Summit talk in June gets at is a failure you cannot see. So the premise, same agent, same tool, same prompt, and it still makes different tool calls, So what I want to know is if you could walk me through the moment you realized, none of these 5 things are moving that decision, like temperature, model, version, context position, schema order, and verbosity. So, like, are the tool itself?
The easiest way to understand this is if none of those 5 are moving your thing towards the right answers, the only way to really understand that is do it comparatively, right? Switch up your situations. Are you getting the same answers? If you're getting the same answers, which I think is anyway a rare occurrence, at that level, if you've switched all 5 of these criteria, then at that point, the only thing you can do is look into how your tool has been developed in the first place, right? So, I mean, I would treat it comparatively, right? Evaluate whether in a comparison they give you the right answers or not. Usually though, if the tool is built properly, if the tool has given you correct answers, I think the assumption here was that the tool worked on day 1. Something changed and tool didn't work on day 2. And what something changed was probably the way your model was set, or if your temperature was defined to not allow for a more, like if you're giving a free leash to your agent, or
that's true.
Whether your tools were ordered properly, if you were leveraging your context window properly, all of that, right? So assuming that the tool does what it is supposed to do. The talk tried to touch upon the factors that you do actually still need to maintain at an MCP level. And so I would say that if something's gone wrong beyond those 5 metrics, it's probably the tool itself. At that point, I think we're kind of like failing the premise that the tool has actually worked. So I would probably just really take a step back to evaluate what you built in the first place at that point.
Got it. Because, just to add to this, so here is where I think yours and mine work collide.
Yeah.
So my whole day is about, pushing agency outward, expanding who gets to build and coordinate, so power doesn't just pool in a few labs.
Yeah.
Right. But your talk also says something uncomfortable about that part, right? If an agent's tool choices are not even stable across routine model update, the moment we hand these agents real leverage like money, contracts, action in the world, we cannot actually pin down what they'll do. So is that something you can engineer your way out of? Better tooling, tests, fingerprinting, or is the unpredictability deep enough?
I think when we talked about this in the talk itself, you were trying to create a more reliable system, right? Better tool ordering, better naming practices, essentially better ways to ensure that your agent is able to pick up the tools and choose them as you'd expect them, at that the tools return answers in a more reliable manner. And I think what's interesting is that a lot of teams now have been experimenting on this front.
True.
Right? I do think they're getting more reliable. I do think they're getting more effective. We are starting to see financial tools of this sort, agentic payment solutions. However, the biggest guardrail that a lot of these more critical tools keep is at some point of time there I do see a human in the loop process. And I
right
feel
now there
like
should always be,
at least today, for anything that
Exactly,
critical,
yeah.
human in the loop is important.
100%.
Obviously, how effective these tools become over time might change that. But for now, I think it's funny that we're still back to relying on people. And where in situations where we were trying to take away work from people, but I do think I trust people still, right? And it's an interesting thing to say in the AI conversation, but it all comes down to people at the end of the day.
Yeah,
So human in the loop is still
relevant.
a very relevant thing, and I would still have that in anything extremely critical, which we do anyway, right? That's what usability testing is. That's what user research and feedback is, right? Where we're still relying on humans in some form or the other. So yeah, I'm just gonna take a moment to cheer for people and humans, and I hope people and humans don't forget that.
Yeah, go humans.
Go humans.
So yeah, I think that sums up my entire conversation. Thank you for coming, Aditya.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much. Bye, folks. See you in the
Bye.
next one.